Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to week two of our Intro to Web Dev course. Thank you very much for joining. And today we will be going into the second part of our basically intro level web dev material, which is using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to build a dynamic web page. Going into today's topic of how to use RESTful APIs. And RESTful APIs are basically just APIs. They're basically all RESTful, so it's kind of redundant. And what that means is that it conforms to a certain format. Um, it conforms to a certain format so that these APIs will allow you to request information from some kind of server that will get information from a certain kind of database and give it to you. For example, you're in your iPhone, the weather app, it makes a call to I guess a weather API, and then gives you that information. And for our assignment this week, you will be using the TMDB movie database API so that you can request movie data to be displayed for your website. And so today we're going to go into our again just going through our course material for our lecture. So let me share the audio for that, and then let me know if you guys couldn't hear it.
According to the Stack Overflow Developer Survey, JavaScript is the #1 most popular programming language in 2019. It's also not even close to the language it was 5 years ago. Almost everything has changed for the better, from where it can run to the actual syntax of the language. As we go into 2020, here's JavaScript explained in just 5 minutes. When you load any page on the internet, your computer sent a folder of files, including at least one HTML file. This HTML file is able to load JavaScript with something called a script tag from either the same folder or elsewhere on the internet. JavaScript is the only client-side language, meaning it waits to execute code until it's on your computer using a program called the browser. Each browser has its own engine, which is what actually executes the code. Among other things, client-side code can change the display, send data, or fetch more data from the server. You might have heard of client-side frameworks like React, Angular, or Vue, which build on top of JavaScript and make writing client-side code a lot easier and more maintainable. But that's another video. Traditionally, JavaScript is an interpreted language, meaning the code is read line by line instead of having to go through a compile step where it's converted to machine code. Browsers have actually added something called the just-in-time compiler, though, to speed up their engines. While JavaScript was known as a slow language in the past, computers are so fast now that's hardly the case anymore. JavaScript's doing pretty much everything these days, from running servers to machine learning and more. We can do a lot of stuff on the back end now with the JavaScript environment known as Node.js. That means we can write APIs, talk to databases, and talk to other servers, all with JavaScript. Node uses the same V8 engine as Chrome, so it's lightning fast. Still, things that are very performance intensive are going to be better off with Go or C++. Let's talk about the language itself. Variables hold either single-cell primitives or compound data. Primitives are usually numbers, booleans, or strings of text, while compound data is held by arrays and objects. In modern JavaScript, we use the keywords let and const to declare variables. If you plan to change it later, use let, otherwise use const. Arrays, also known as lists in other languages, are just multi-celled, ordered clusters of data. Objects, also known as dictionaries in other languages, are pretty much what they sound like. You give it a word and it retrieves the definition. For example, if I give it the key name, it'll retrieve the value Aaron. The DOM, or document object, is the most important object in JavaScript. It's a JavaScript representation of the structure of our HTML and is present in the variable document when we load the page. The document object contains many element objects. Through the DOM, we can search for specific elements, add user event listeners, or change how the page looks. All this is possible through a set of methods called the browser API. We'll get to methods soon. JavaScript's a C.
Okay, so again, if this is getting a lot, don't worry about it. A lot of things is just good to know. A lot of things are not necessary to know. And if this is just a very basic crash course on JavaScript, and if you're confused, you're welcome to watch it again and look up all the things that he's talking about. But for most of the things, you can just kind of get through it once and then just know that there are these things, and that's about it. And the things that you really need to know, we'll go through them somewhere.
Like language, meaning it stole most of its syntax from C. This includes if statements, for loops, while loops, and more. Speaking of loops, most commonly we'll use a for in loop to iterate over an object and a for of loop to iterate over an array. Functions are just any code we want to use more than once. We declare these with the special keyword function, followed by whatever we want to name our function, and finally the parameters or inputs to our function. You can think of them as variables that are set later when we use our function. We'll also want to return something which will be the output or result of our function. Call a function with its name and by passing in inputs as arguments. Methods are the same as functions, except they're attached to different data types. We call these methods with the dot notation. Functions can also be written like this. Parameters are on the left, and it returns automatically if written on one line. Arrow functions are generally used in array methods, which take a function as an argument and run that function on every item in the array. Don't worry, that's as complicated as we'll get. Another huge part of JavaScript is known as asynchronous programming, or performing non-deterministic operations, such as a network request to a server to fetch more data. We don't know when the request is going to return or if it's going to fail, so we have to handle both of those cases. Async programming has evolved a lot over the years in JavaScript, but the current standard is async await, and it's awesome. All you have to do is add the await keyword, and it will pause your program when you send a request until that request either comes back or fails. While not technically JavaScript, I also have to mention TypeScript, which compiles into normal JavaScript. Vanilla JavaScript has what's known as dynamic types or no types, and TypeScript gives us static typing, meaning we have to be specific about what kind of value is in a variable. This seems like extra work, but it actually helps us catch a ton of errors. Finally, let's talk about NPM, the Node Package Manager. Chances are, if you need some code, someone else has already written it. You can download it as a module, and chances are it's well tested and bug-free. Anyway, that's JavaScript in just 5 minutes. Please like the video if you liked it, so other people.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions about things they're wondering just from the video? Anybody? Okay. Oh, yeah, right.
What's the difference between JavaScript and Java?
What's the difference between JavaScript and Java?
Mm-hmm.
Everything. So,
okay.
Basically, JavaScript, it was designed after Java, right? Was designed as a language, and Java was really popular back in the days. And then when these guys created JavaScript, they were just like, you know what? This code is something related to Java, since Java is so big, right? And then they just called it JavaScript. And the two languages basically have no correlation. They're just two different languages. So in terms of the actual, I guess, languages themselves, Java and JavaScript, they're all good at different things. JavaScript, like I talked about, it runs on the web, right? The web runs on JavaScript, and Java not so much. But you can also use Java for some of the stuff. For example, for the backend, right? Setting up servers, Java is good for different things as well. You can definitely learn more about and compare and contrast them with different material. You can go very in depth with that. But for, I guess, your intro to programming course, they will use Java. They use Java, and then for
I think
web,
so.
we'll just use JavaScript. Okay, and then we'll just watch another one of these videos to kind of go through another overview again, just to get a little bit better idea of JavaScript.
JavaScript, a high-level single-threaded, garbage-collected, interpreted, or just-in-time compiled, prototype-based, multi-paradigm dynamic language with a non-blocking event loop, made
like I say, you don't have to worry about memorizing all that.
Famous for building websites. It was created in 1995 in just 1 week by Brendan Eich, with the goal of adding an easy-to-learn scripting language to the Netscape browser. It was originally named Mocha, but the genius marketing people of the time wanted it to sound like that sexy new Java language. Today, it's a fully featured language that continues to evolve through the ECMAScript standard. It's most well known for building front-end web applications, because it's the only language other than WebAssembly that is natively supported in browsers. However, anything that can be built with JavaScript will be built with with JavaScript, like server-side applications with Node.js, mobile applications with React Native or Ionic, and desktop apps with Electron. It's an interpreted scripting language, but tools like the V8 engine and Chromium use a just-in-time compiler to convert it to machine code at runtime. It's also excellent at handling I/O-intensive jobs, despite the fact that it's a single-threaded language, made possible by a non-blocking event loop that can queue up work in the background without blocking the main thread. To get started, create a file ending in .js. Your code will start executing from the global context. Use the console to log a value with the built-in debugger. Now think about where you want to run this file. Is it a front-end browser or a back-end Node.js server? In the browser, you can reference it with a script tag, then the browser will execute it when you open that HTML file. On a website, JavaScript is often used to grab an element from the DOM. Document query selector will grab the first button, then we can assign it to a variable with either var, let, or const. Var is the OG way to do it, but is typically avoided. Let is for variables that can be reassigned, while const is for variables that cannot be reassigned. Now, to make the button interactive, we can add an event listener to it by defining a function for the onClick event. We can use the function keyword here or the more concise arrow syntax. Now, the event loop will execute this function whenever a new click occurs. Functions are first-class objects to support functional programming patterns, but JavaScript also supports classes and inheritance for object-oriented patterns. Even though it's single-threaded, it can do work asynchronously with the Promise API, which also supports the async await syntax. JS code can also run on the server thanks to the Node.js runtime. Instead of buttons on a web page, it interacts with things like the file system API. Execute your code on the server by pulling up the terminal and entering the node command. This has been JavaScript in 100 seconds. Hit the like button and subscribe if you want to see more short videos like this, and become a Fireship Pro member if you want to learn how to do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Okay, so again, do you have any questions just from the past two videos? Anything you're wondering about? No? Okay, so moving on, we will be going to the W3 Schools JavaScript tutorial. We're going to go through that together and then just kind of get an idea again of the basics of JavaScript. So I want everybody to, I will paste this link in the chat as well. So you can just come to this place and then we can just go through this together. So I guess we can just start with the introduction right here. And we'll just go through this. JavaScript can change HTML content, right? Which is basically its main purpose. For all the web pages, for all the HTML contents, there are certain things that you wanted to move and change, right? And these should be the exceptions where I'm hovering my mouse over these things. These things are kind of moving or changing, but this can be achieved with CSS. So CSS can also visually move things around, right? But again, when it comes to actually changing the contents of a web page, it will require JavaScript to get things to change, get things to move. So let's try this real quick. This one of the JavaScript HTML methods is get element by ID, right? The example below finds an HTML element with ID demo and changes the element content, which is the inner HTML, to hello JavaScript. So let's try this. As you can see, this element right here, it has an ID of demo, right? And then it's referenced right here with this function, with this method, get element by ID. So document, which is the the entire document that looks for certain element, right? In this document, you get this element by its ID demo, and then you'll be able to reference it. So this element dot inner HTML will return you, will basically allow you to, I guess, get access to the value that's inside of it. So as you can see right here, this is the inner HTML that you see right now. So what this JavaScript right here is doing, this is all the JavaScript, right? Only this right here. This is HTML, inner HTML, and then this right here is the JavaScript. And this onClick is an attribute that you can add to HTML elements where you can define a certain behavior. For example, on click, on mouse over, on a certain event happening, you would execute this JavaScript code. So when we click this, it's obviously going to change the inner HTML to hello JavaScript, right? And you can also do this even if this element is initially empty or even doesn't exist, right? Click, and then it went from an empty element where there's actually nothing, you don't even see it, to where you can add HTML content, right, which is just text, into this HTML element. So for your assignment where you're going to build an IMDb website, you can use the same mechanism, right, where you're only going to define an empty HTML element. I guess it's just a div, right? And then make its ID for this grid. Okay. So once you define that, you can just manipulate this element and then add content into its inner HTML so that once you get the movie data, you will be able to display it into this div, and then you can create a grid from that. So JavaScript accepts both single and double quotes. As you can see, single quotes for these things that they're referring to, single quotes and double quotes will be fine. But for consistency, I always use double quotes. I just like double quotes some more. Some people like single quotes. It doesn't really matter much. JavaScript can change HTML attribute values, right? So in this example, you can click turn on the light, turn it on, turn off the light, turn it off, which is just a different image, right? As you're doing it, what it does is this image, right? When it uses this method, document.getElementById, my image, which my image right here, right? This image by default is just a picture of I guess a GIF of a light bulb. And then once you click that button, turn on the light bulb, it changes it to this one, bulb on, right? Bulb on. And this source, I guess it's saved somewhere on their, either on their server or I don't know, it's somewhere. So that once you change this, it just automatically gets changed and then displayed, just like that. Very simple. So again, you can retrieve, I guess you can, sorry. You can access an HTML element using this syntax, document.getElementById, and then references ID. And then from there, you can use dots to access its different, I guess, attributes, right? Attribute values. This is source, the source attribute. So you can basically just modify it using JavaScript alone. Otherwise, you can basically just do the same thing manually, right? So using JavaScript, you can change the attribute of elements, which you can also change color. You can also change font size, font, background, all the different things. Okay, you can change HTML style, like we talked about. Over here we have the element h2 and the paragraph demo. We use document.getElementById demo. We go into the style, right, which is an attribute itself, and then within this attribute, it also has attributes, which is font size. We can change it to 35 pixels. I can also change this dots. I guess color equals red. How about that? There we go. So as you can see, it's very simple, just like that, using JavaScript. First, you want to access a certain element that you are referring to, you want to manipulate, and then go into, I guess, do something with that. And using the equation equal sign, you can assign a certain value to its property. Then you can change its color or different stuff. JavaScript can hide HTML elements. So this is similar to the last example where in the style attribute, you have this display attribute. And if you remember, in the CSS parts of the material that we were working on, you can use display flex to turn something into a flex box, or display grid. I wouldn't go over grid before, but there's different things you can use. By default, every element is display block, right? So this is display block, display block. You can make it display none, so that it just disappears, even though it has content inside of it, right? So suppose I can make this into display none, but I also have another button, right? I'm gonna say click that, then click this, and then I'm gonna make it display block. So now I click that and it's display none, right? This right here is display none, and then click this, goes back to display block. Sounds good. Okay. That's the same thing I just described. Pretty much just that. And I think next I want to go through variables real quick. 4 ways to declare a JavaScript variable. We're just going to convert lets and const because var is a thing of the past and we don't use it anymore. It's the same function as lets, but it's less efficient. So we just use lets and const. So like the videos explain, let is for variables where you are gonna store some kind of information and then later change it maybe, and const is for things that you're not gonna change. So as you can see, variables are just containers for storing data, right? Storing values. In this example, x, y, z, and variables, and we can declare them with this keyword, right? So you can see we only have this HTML code right here, and then in the script tag, we're including JavaScript code. So if you want to have 3 different variables which we can use, we can declare it with var. They're using var. Var variable name equals 5, and then a semicolon, right? In JavaScript, code can run without semicolon, but it's a little bit better to use semicolon because it makes it consistent for consistency, for convention, but also the code, in very rare circumstances, the code might execute in a way that you don't want it to if it doesn't have a semicolon, because it separates different lines of code, right? So you have x that's initialized to be 5, and you have y that's initialized to be 6. Then you have z that's initialized to be x plus y. So you can get these doing the same thing. Document.id, document.get element by id demo, which is this paragraph and empty element. You can change this in there, the HTML, to display the value of z is, which is a string right here, right? In JavaScript, you can use a string, which is just a series of characters, right? A series of characters and a number. So this number will automatically be converted from just a number to the character of a number, right? Which is very slightly different, the string of a number. You can perform calculations on numbers, but you can't really perform calculations on strings, right? Numerical calculations. So as you can see, this JavaScript, once you define it, and then you just write your code like this, right? This right here. It just gets executed as the page is loaded because you didn't put it in the function, you didn't do anything, you didn't have a button for it. You just write it and it just gets executed. So that's what they call it at a global level, right? Because all over this file, this is at the highest level where the code is executing. And going down from the highest level, you can define functions where some things are happening, and functions where there are functions and all that. So without all that unnecessary things, you can do these, just write code, just add it without any function, just at the bottom, right? Add a script tag, and it just gets executed. So a little bit after that, we're not gonna go over undeclared variables. That's not a good way to write code. So we just saw vars, right? And we can also see lets. which is pretty much just the same thing. But also one thing about variables, if you define with lets, you cannot really redeclare them, which is that if you declare something to be like a string, you cannot define it to be another thing. With var, you can, but you don't necessarily want that. You want to make sure that when you define something to be a certain way, it just stays that way. There's something called block scope, which if you're coming from a non-programming background, you kind of need to know, which is just that, say you define a certain thing, right? Inside a block, maybe a function, right? It goes into this local level. For example, this variable is defined here. When you have something that goes here, let me see, you're declaring variables. This is not a good example, but what I'm trying to say is if you define a function, then the variable that you define within the function can only be used within that function. Maybe we can go over that later. So with lets, it will not let you, I guess, I don't even know about this stuff. This is just somewhere obscure thing with block scope. You don't need to worry about that. That's not very practical for our purposes. So with const, you cannot redeclare something. You cannot reassign something. You don't need to worry about the scope. So if you define a constant, which could be something like something that just won't need to be changed, you know, have its value be the same, consistent over throughout the program, then you can use const. So I guess the benefit of using const is, first of all, if you do have something that you don't want to change, for example, a URL that you're going to keep using all over and all over, use const to declare and then store it in the variable. If you don't want to change it, then just kind of use it as const. So sometimes when you write code, you accidentally write some code that will change that value. It will, I guess, warn you or create an error, and then you'll know, okay, my code is wrong. You can definitely use lets to just declare a pi, right? To just declare pi, it will be just fine. No worries with that. But using const is good practice. If you're not gonna use it, always use const. If you're gonna change it, if you're not gonna change the value, always use const. If you're going to change it, always use let, which is good practice. So we're going to functions. Functions, as you saw a little bit in the video, you can define a function with the function keyword, and then you have a function name, parentheses, that will include your parameters. The parameters is just what you can use as inputs for a function, and then you will have an output that's denoted with a return keyword, right? So you have a P1, P2, they were defined? They're not defined. So this P1, P2, right? They didn't already define it anywhere. It wasn't declared anywhere, but it's just a flexible way for you to just give it two different values, whatever value. So my function 4, 3, that's how you're calling this function, right? And once you call this function, these two values, 4 correspond to P1 and 3 correspond to P2 because of their position. It just returns P1 times P2. So this value and this value plus this function, the output will be just 12. That's it, simple as that. And then using this syntax, you are modifying the inner HTML of this paragraph to contain the output of this function, right? So this is the same thing that we're going to be using for your IMDb, where you will use functions, define functions, where it returns you some kind of HTML material, some kind of HTML code, some kind of HTML, so that you would just plug it into like the grid that you want to be displaying these different movies. So that's a little bit about the functions. Any questions so far? No? Okay. So let's go over this a little bit more. the function syntax. The JavaScript function is defined with a function keyword followed by a name and parentheses. We talked about that. Function return, very simple and straightforward. Pretty much just that. Okay, and then we can also talk about arrow functions, maybe a little bit later. And then there's JavaScript objects. Okay, so JavaScript objects are pretty much like the backbone of JavaScript, because so many things, all the different things, they're just objects. In real life, a car is an object, right? And then it has properties, like for example, car name, it has a value, car model has a value. So every property, and there's also methods. I think we can skip methods for now. Except that you saw earlier, there were some methods like document.get, right? Things like that. Document.get, this is a method, and the document itself is an object. That's why it has a method. So you just kind of know that, but the theory behind it is not that important. You just kind of, as long as you know the syntax, you understand and you know how to use it, don't have to worry about the rest that much, at least for now. So a card object, it has all these different properties, right? And then suppose I see this car, I'm wondering how heavy it is. I'll just go and look for car.weight, and then or I want to like store that data into this variable. I'm gonna say car.weight equals 850 kilograms. All cars have the same properties, but the property values can be different, and all cars have the same methods, but the methods are performed at different times and for different purposes. So that is very, very basic of what an object is, and you'll be using objects a lot, right? So let car equals fiat. That's just a variable storing a single string, right? I guess this is technically an object, but not like what we're really talking about. An object is something that has many different properties that we're storing. Okay, this code assigns a simple value to a variable. But objects can contain many values. So this code assigns many values to a single variable, right? And this is its syntax. We're going to use curly braces, and then you have a property, colon, value, and then the next property separated with a comma, property, colon, value, the model is type function, and then the same thing, color white. So suppose you want to get something from this object, you would use car dot property, and then you will get that, right? As you can see, the car type is fiat, and all over here, same thing all over again. We reference these HTML elements with this code right here, and then we access this property of this element. This element itself is technically an object, so that we can access this inner HTML. And then once we have all these, this string plus this value, which is also a string, once we get all these, we assign them into this inner HTML with this equal sign right here. Very simple. Any questions? Good. Can I get a thumbs up if you're following along? Okay. All right. The values are written as name, value pairs, name and value separated by a column. Very simple, just like that. You can define and create a JavaScript object with an object literal. Let's take a look at that. First name, last name, age, eye color. Okay, as you can see, you can access different properties at the same time, and then display that information. Person first name, job is, which is just a string that includes the spaces, because this by default only have the letters, the characters. Plus age is years old. Very simple. Okay. Spaces and line breaks are not important, and object definition can span multiple lines, right? Just like that, it's the same thing that we saw from the last example, but the spaces and line breaks don't affect the meaning. And we actually prefer to have objects in this way so that they're easier to see what properties there are, easier to see what values there are, instead of just all in a line like that. Okay, seems pretty good. And let's go over events a little bit real quick. So HTML events are things that can happen to HTML elements, right? And when JavaScript is involved, they can react on these events, right? So there are some examples of events. When this web page finishes loading, you want something to happen. When this web page, suppose the input field was changed, you want something to happen. For example, in right here, right? If I type G, they use JavaScript to display these prompts for all the things that they think I might be looking for. When a button was clicked, you want something to happen, right? Often when events happen, you may want to do something, and then JavaScript lets you execute code when these events are detected. So for your IMDb website, I want you to implement a search function. So you're gonna have an input as well, and you can detect for when the input is when the search form is submitted. Say the user presses enter, you want to display the search results, or you can technically, if you want, you can display search results for every time the user inputs character, right? Say B, you display a bunch of results, A, and then a bunch, T, and then Bat, you display Batman movies and things like that. There's different ways to go about that, and literally anything you can possibly think of, you can probably have a way to do it. So let me see. Let's go into this a little bit. We talked about the onClick function a little bit. So it's pretty much the same example as we saw earlier. We use JavaScript code. This is I guess an attribute, right? And then with the equation, with the equal sign, you can just assign JavaScript code as the value into this little property, right? So as this is detected, the click is detected, the code is executed. So now I click it, it just displays the date, which is the current date, the exact time right now in CDT, Central Daylight Time, to be the inner HTML of these little HTML elements, right? As I do it, it just changes the inner HTML every time. Pretty simple. Okay. All right, and then we're going to arrays, which is fun because a lot of things in JavaScript, when you're dealing with data, they're usually either in the form of objects or arrays, right? Arrays is very simple, it's just a list of stuff, some kind of stuff. I have cars, I have Saab, Volvo, BMW. And then if I use document.get element by ID demo inner HTML, which is this again, if I set the inner HTML to be this array, it just displays the values itself and nothing else. And these are strings. These are the values inside this array, which is just these 4 characters, these 5 characters, and these 3 characters. And then the comma is not this one. Technically, yes, but when you are just trying to turn an array, right, into something that can be in your HTML, like text, it has to be converted to string. And then when it converts to string, all these values, they get separated by comma. That's it. Why use arrays? If you have a list of items, storing them in single variables, yeah, they have to look like this. But if you want to do something to all of these cars at the same time, then you have to have an array so that you can access the values, right? You can create an array like this, very simple. So here's a cool thing. Suppose you have an array, right? It's initially empty, right? That's the syntax. You just declare const names, and then just empty brackets, square brackets. And there you go, you have an array right here. And you can also define values into this array by doing this cars bracket 0 equals sab. So what it does is that it didn't even have anything before, but you're giving this index starting from 0, 1, 2. At index 0, I'm going to give you the value. At index 1, I'm going to give you the value. And at index 2, I'm going to give you the value. So suppose if I were to do this, index 0, it has sab, and then index 1, it actually has just like emptiness. It actually has like void, or probably no, just nothing at all. And the nothing is still there, right? Because you can see an extra comma. And then at index 2, which is technically position 3, right? Because it starts from 0, 0, 1, 2. At position 3, which is index 2, you have VNW. Any questions? Okay. All right. This is not very necessary. So without that being said, we can probably look at the array methods. So the array methods are very important, extremely important. You're gonna work with array methods a lot if you're a web developer. This method to string converts an array to a string of values, which is not interesting, but it basically does the same thing as what we saw earlier, right? You have a toString method applied onto this array, right? And then it turns all these values into strings, but they're already strings. And if I were to delete these, I get the same stuff. So we assign this into like I guess inner HTML to be displayed. Either way, it will be converted to strings. So that's not very relevant. You also have a join methods to join different elements inside the array together with a certain, I guess, character, certain pattern. That's just something that you can do. That's not very practical for our purposes. Popping and pushing is something you do need to know. It's very common. So say you have an array right here. I'm going to separate out these lines. So you have an array right here, a bunch of different fruits. You can do inner HTML equals fruits, assign it to demo1, right? And you have all the elements in fruits. And if you do pop, fruits.pop, what it does is that it gets rid of the last element, right? Fruits.pop, it just gets rid of the last one. And as you can see, it just disappears. And you can also do append, which is the opposite of popping. You just add something to the end of an array. Oh, I'm gonna get it back. Let me get another as my here. Element by ID. Might be missing something. Maybe this is not the right method name. I might have forgot. Pop and push. Oh yeah. Yeah, I think I forgot. I forgot the right method name. Push. And this is still not push and go. I'm not sure. I might be missing something, but you get the idea. Pop picks up the last elements, and then push. You have an array of 4 elements. You take it to, assign it to the inner HTML. You just push kiwi. Now you have a new element. I'm not sure what I was doing wrong earlier. It looks like what I had before. Maybe it was just a wrong reference. But as you can see, very simple, just like that. It's one of the most basic things you would do with, I guess, a JavaScript array. So let's see. You also have shift. It's less common. Just for a lot of purposes, you will rarely use it. If you just somehow want to get rid of an element, you can probably just use pop. Oh, that you don't really need to know. It's not very important. You can check for the length of an array, right? So, okay, so the array.length, it returns you like the length of the array, which in this case is 4. The indexes are 0, 1, 2, 3, and the elements representing elements 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So suppose you say I want to get fruits.length, which is 4. So fruits bracket 4, it goes and accesses the 4th element. No, the element at the 4th position, because this is an index at the 4th position, index 4. So I said 4th position, that's not right. Index 4 is the 5th position, because this index starts from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 at the 5th position. If you were to do this, it gives you another element, just like that. Any questions? No? Great. All right, so that is a lot of the array methods, and now we're going to go into some of these array functions that you're going to use a lot. So there's a video real quick.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your bro. Hope you're doing well. And in this video, I'm going to explain the for each method of arrays in JavaScript. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Alright, we are on the for each method today. The for each method is a built-in method of arrays. The for each method will perform a function of our choosing for each element in our array, hence the name for each. Let's say that we have an online store and we need to calculate the total after somebody adds a bunch of items to their shopping cart. So let's say we have a variable named total, and I will assign a value of 0, and we'll create an array named cart, like a shopping cart. This will just be an array of different prices of items. Let's say we have one item that is $5, another that is $6, $7, $8, and $9. What I would like to do is to create a function to add all of these different prices together to display a total that the user needs to pay. So we need to create a function to take care of that for us. Function, let's call this checkout, like the user is checking out. And there will be one parameter of element. All we'll do is take our total plus equals our element. So using the for each method, this function is going to execute a total of 5 times, once for each element in our array. So now what we need to do is to utilize this for each method, and we can do so maybe here. So type the name of your array minus cart dot and use the for each method. Within our for each method, we're going to pass in the name of a function that we would like to execute and call. This is known as a callback function. You can see that right here, callback fn for function. So when we use our callback function, we actually do not need to provide an element, an index, or the name of our array. Those are included for us. So let's use console.log to display the total. So let's add a string such as your total is $ plus total. And let's try it. Your total is $35, so I'm pretty sure that's 35, 11, 18, 26, 35. So when you pass in a function as an argument to the for each method of an array, the value, index, and array are already provided for you, so you do not need to pass them in as arguments, but you do have to list them as parameters if you plan on using them. Currently, we're only utilizing our element, also known as our value. You can rename them too if you need to. So let's say we need our index as well as our array. We can just list them as parameters then, but we do not need to pass them in as arguments, since this is a callback function that we're passing as an argument. So if you need your index or array for anything, you can just write that within your function body. So that is the for each method. It performs a function for each element in an array. If you would like a copy of this code, as always, I'll post this in the comments section down below. But yeah, that is the for each method of arrays.
Okay, so can I get a thumbs up if you got a good idea of how to make it work? Good. Okay, so with that, we're gonna go straight into I guess a lab that I designed. So this right here is a repo hosted on wearbit.com. This is a tool for us to write code and then work on these together. The only code that I wrote right here, you can access it if you just paste in the link. And what I want you to do is to fork this. I can just continue with Google and then just do that real quick. And I'm just gonna paste the link in the chat again, even though you can access it in the course portal as well. I want you to go into the repo that I created, and then I want you to work on the first part so that you can access the array, and then answer the first question. Right, so you just fork this, and then you can see all the code is just automatically on the right side. You can see what's being displayed, right? So you can also go into the script.js to see what we have. You have these student data, right? The constants. And what it is that this is an array, because you can see that there's all these two square brackets. And then within that, there's objects, right? Because this is one object, this is one object. They all have their attributes, they have their properties, and then these values. So I want you to go through this array. I want you to access each object, and then just give me the list of student names, right? So with this function, I want you to take a minute or two and figure out. You can refer back to the material, you can refer back to the video, you can refer back to the W3 Schools tutorials and for each method as well. I think it's probably in JavaScript array methods. Okay, so array iteration, right? You can also reference this to go through the elements and then remember how the objects work. Once you iterate through all these elements, right? I want you to access each element's name, each object's name, and then just return that to me, so that when this gets to the names is code on the data, student names will be returned. So what I want you to do is to define what needs to be defined right here and access it, so that you can get a good idea of how to use the for each every iteration function. Okay, I think I may have made this a little bit harder than I wanted it to. So I think I'm actually just gonna guide you guys to finish this. Yeah, I definitely made it a little bit harder than I wanted to. So here's what we're working with. We have an array of student data, right? So this student data, I want you guys to kind of use the for each function to add the student name into the student names array, so that you can return that. But I think the way to do it, the easiest way to do it is actually to use the array function, which you guys are probably not familiar with. So I'll demonstrate that real quick, but I will break it down for you guys. So for each student, use the array function, and then you can add the student names. Just take the student names and then push that. So just access the student name, right? So for each student in the student data array, you will iterate through each student, and then this array function will denote what happens for each student is that each of the student names is gonna get pushed into this student names array. Okay. So if I run it, then I have Michelle, Joy, Catalina, Raven. Okay, it's actually takes a little bit to get used to the array function, and you guys shouldn't feel like too intimidated about it, because if you just try it a couple of times, you will eventually just kind of get a pattern. But we didn't exactly go through that very well, so I think it might have been a little hard for you guys, but that's fine. We'll just go back to our material, and then we'll go through the next array function. If you feel a little frustrated with that, it's okay. It's probably my fault. I should have went through the array functions. But even though these seems a little strange or unfamiliar, this is the easiest way to do like a bunch of things in JavaScript. So you'll get that, you get familiar with that pretty soon. Okay, so we'll go through the map function next.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your bro. Hope you're doing well. In this video, I'm going to discuss the map method of arrays in JavaScript. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, the map method. The map method is a built-in method of arrays. It will perform a function for each element in an array, then store the returned values in a new array. Here's an example of why this would be useful. Let's use our imagination and say that we have an online store. There's a bunch of different prices within an array, and the name of this array is store USD, short for US dollars. What I would like to do is to convert all of these different prices to maybe euros, and we can use the built-in map method of an array to help us with that. But first, we need to define a function to convert dollars to euros. Here's how. Let's define a function called toEuros. And we'll need at least one parameter of value. Now, the current conversion rate from dollars to euros is 0.85. So we could say something like value equals value times 0.85. Or we could use the shortcut and say value times equals 0.85. Now, the important part is that we need to return our value, and each value will be stored within a new array. Now let's create a new array. Let store EUR, short for euros, equals the name of our array dot map. Now with the map method, we're going to pass in a callback function. So the callback is going to be toEuros, and then we can display our array in euros. Store EUR. Let's try it. So here's all of the different elements in our array of store EUR. And the nice thing about using the map method of an array is that our original array will still be retained. So we have prices in both US dollars and euros. So let's display our store in US dollars as well as euros. So console.log store USD and console.log store EUR. So we have prices in both US dollars and euros. So that's basically the map method of an array. It will perform a function for each element in an array, then store the returned values in a new array. So if you need to do something like a price conversion, this would work perfect for you. So that is the built-in map method of an array. If you would like a copy of all this code, I will post this to the comment section down below. But yeah, that is the map method in JavaScript.
Okay, so the map method, give me a thumbs up if you have a pretty good idea of how it works. A thumbs up. Okay, so we can go through the iteration function tutorial a little bit more. right? Over here, you also go for the map function. Starting off, we have an array of numbers, right? And then we have another array of numbers that should be coming from the numbers 1. But we're going to do something with numbers 1 so that this second array of numbers can be defined. So this part is just putting numbers 2 into an HTML element. So the function that we define, which is going to be a callback function, like you say, the function to be passed into a function, right? This callback function takes value index array. So it seems a little bit much, right? It doesn't even have anything right here, which is like they say before, a callback function will automatically handle it. So as long as you define it, it's just going to handle it. But this is not a very common way of defining things. Usually you want to define, say, like just a value, right? My function value times 2. And then it's just going to do, I guess, value. And over here, I'll demonstrate again how to use the array function. When you take that value, what do I want to happen to it? I'm going to use this array function to denote that I'm going to do my function value. So hopefully this is looks a little simpler than the last one. It might be just as complicated, but you will get used to it. So you can see it's the exact same results, right? Just like that. So again, going over the array function again, it takes a value, right? First of all, this map function goes through each individual value inside the array, each individual one. For 45, it takes this value, passing into this array function. And this is basically the parameter for the array function, right? This is a function that says that do this function with this value. That's it. So this function is value times 2. It's the parameter, it's the parameter, return it back into here. Okay. So this value is going to be reassigned to whatever this returns, right? Because my function returns something. So that my array function says, this is a parameter. I want it to go into this function, down here, and then return back out of this, and then back here, and then back here, so that this 45 becomes 90, and then goes into the new array. Okay, I hope that's not too complicated, but that's just how it works. You just need to get used to this little notation right here, right? You don't even have to necessarily define a function to handle this right here, because that's actually a little redundant. You can actually just do value equals value times 2. How about 3? Boom, there you go. So that should definitely be a lot simpler than what we saw earlier, where you have to define a separate function for the array function to kind of deal with. The array function itself is a function. It takes a parameter, takes that parameter, does something with it, and then return back, right? And then this map function does the same thing for every value. So it returns back, goes into numbers 2. Good? Can I get a thumbs up if you have a good idea of how the map function works? Still a little confused? Lauren, how are you feeling?
Just a little bit confused and lost, but I think I'm getting the hang of it.
Okay, yeah, you can just look at some more examples and then maybe get a hand of it. Kayla, how are you feeling?
Oh, I'm still confused. I don't know
Okay.
what's going on.
That's fine. So again, we'll just look at more examples, right? Let's just make it a little bit simpler. Let's say I have an array, the values are just 1, 2, 3. And now I want to have an array, a new array, const new array. And I want its values to be 2, 3, 4. right? So add 1 to every single value I have. And what I want to do is to use the map function. So I would take numbers 1 dot map, right? So the array function would be the easiest way to do it. So when it's mapping through it, I'm just gonna say for each value, and this right here is arbitrary. I can say element, I can say this element for each element. I'm gonna do element plus 1. Plus 1. New array, okay. Using plus 1. Let me see something. New array. Okay, numbers. Say I just want to do value, those values plus 1. That should be it. That seems like something I had just now. Okay, but let's come again. Start over. Let's say I want to have numbers 2 to be the same as numbers 1, except every value plus 5, right? So I'm gonna do numbers 1 dot map, because I'm gonna take this element, I'm gonna turn it into another one. This element turn it into another one. Just do another one. So it's almost like a map where this corresponds to another thing somewhere. You take a physical map, every single icon, every single mountain corresponds to somewhere in the real world, right? So it's like a map. Every single thing will turn into another thing. This will turn into another thing. So this will map onto a new array that I have, right? And for each value, I'm gonna have value what I want every value, add 5 to it. Add 5 to it. What? Oh, that's not right. That's it. Wait, that's I don't know what I was missing right there. Const numbers 2 equals numbers 1 dot map value for each value is gonna be value plus 5.
Don't you need numbers 1? You say numbers and you forget 1.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. So just like that, hopefully we're getting better. We're feeling better about this. Okay, for each value, this can be just any name. I'm gonna say X, right? But anyways, what it's just referring to is each element. So each time is iterating, which is just going through one by one. Whatever is iterating adds, I want these to happen to it. And then when it's all done, mapping through every single element, give me all the results into a new element.
Okay, yeah, for the each value, is that an equal sign and then a less than sign, or
Yeah, this is a equal and then greater than.
greater than? Okay.
Yeah, just like that. Okay, feeling better? All right, that's great. Okay, so now we'll go back into this example again. Which one? There's a map function, right? Okay, this is definitely way too hard. It's just too hard on you guys. So we'll just go through their labs. How about okay, I'm gonna make one up on the spot. All right. So what is this right here? Okay, we have a map function. All right, I want you guys to try. I guess what's the difference between this and this? Function. Is there any difference? It's the same thing. I don't know. Anyways, I want you guys to come into this page, come to this page, and also just try it out yourself. And I'm gonna give you a prompt. Okay, so for all these numbers, I want you to write, get rid of the line before. I want you to make it so that their values What is the square root notation? Square roots, does it work? Math dot, it seems like, okay, I'm not gonna try that. I want you to just divide it by 2. That's it, very simple. Take all these functions, take all these values. I want you to use the map function and divide it by 2. And store it into numbers 2, right? Numbers 1 map. Okay, so I want you to also just use the arrow notation and fill this in. Okay, Riley, do you want to share screen and show us? Right. Okay, so get rid of that line right there. I want you guys to try rewriting it. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so how about this? I'm gonna make another one on the spot. I want you to time divide everything by 3. Great. And yeah, and you can get rid of the function right there, so that is less confusing, because we don't need that. We just use the arrow notation. And that's it. 14 divided by 3, 15 of that. Good. And then Kayla, can you try it too? I'm gonna give you another one. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's that's for each. Can you just use the link that I sent in the chat, and then we can go to the map example. Perfect. All right. So as you can see, it's using my function to multiply everything by 2, right? We'll just use the array notation because it's a lot. Once you know how it works, it's a lot simpler. So you can delete that function, just get rid of it. Okay, yeah, delete that, and then on the bottom, that function, my function, can just get rid of that too. All right, so after numbers 1, I want you to write a new line, and then I want you to define another array. Just numbers 2 is fine. Great. And then use equal sign, we're gonna assign to it, okay? And then you're gonna use numbers 1 to map, because I want you to take every element and plus 15 to it. So inside the parentheses, you can just use a variable name, right? You can just define a variable name. X is good. Arrow notation, arrow x plus 15. And there we go. Run it. And there we have it. That's it. Pretty simple, right? So feeling good? Awesome. All right, so let's move on to the next thing, which is JavaScript filter. Okay, there's the last thing. There's a lot of array iteration functions, but this is just 3 that we're gonna go through.
What's going on, everybody? It's your bro. Hope you're doing well. In today's video, we're going to discuss the filter method of arrays in JavaScript. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. So the filter method is a built-in method of arrays. It will return the elements of an array that meet a condition specified in a function. Let's say that we have an array of student ages. Maybe this is some sort of college course. You'll typically see a wide range of different student ages. So we have an array named students. One student is 16, another 17, 18, 19, and 20. So our mission is to create a new array of students that are 18 or older. So we'll need a function to check a certain condition. So let's define a function named check age. And we'll need one parameter of value. Okay, so here's our condition. If our value is greater than or equal to 18, then we will return our value. Actually, I think I'm going to rename this parameter as age, just so that it's more easily understood. Okay, so we need to use the filter method of our array, and the callback is going to be a check age. So we will perform the check age method using each element in our array. So let's create a new array. Let adult students equals the name of our original array of students dot, and we will use the filter method. And by using the filter method, we will pass in a function callback. So we need to list the name of our function, check age, and we do not need to pass in any parameters. So the value, index, and array of our original array will be provided. So if you need a value, index, or an array, these are already provided in that order, and you can rename them too. We're going to rename value as age. So this will filter all students in our original array that are 18 or older and place them within a new array called adult students. And then let's use console.log and display all of our adult students. So we have an array of 3 elements. One student is 18, 19, and 20. Now the reason that you don't want to use map in this place of filter is that we'll have some empty holes within our array. So we have undefined, undefined, 18, 19, 20. So for this situation, using filter would be better. Well, okay then everybody, that is the filter method of arrays. It will return the elements of an array that meet a condition specified in a function. Our condition is that we were checking to see if a student's age was greater than or equal to 18. If so,
Okay. Also, kind of just theoretically, it's simple enough, right? It's not too hard to understand. And then we also, I guess, try a tutorial with them, and then we'll be good with the filter. For filter, we actually you will not be needing it for your assignments, so it's actually you don't have to worry too much about it. And I think for the assignment, you pretty much just need map, right? Because what you're gonna do is that you're gonna get a list of the movie data, and that's gonna include the movie title, overview, poster, and all that. So for each movie that you get in that movie data array, I want you to map it so that it doesn't. You can have it return the movie title for every movie. You can have it return the movie poster for every movie, and ultimately, I want you to return the poster, rating, and title, so that you can have a very, very basic view of the movies for your movie script. Okay, so pretty much the same thing. Yeah, right. Just like what we saw earlier, I think it's really just the same thing. And then over here, I want to demonstrate again. You can also use the array function to do the same thing. If I remember correctly. Let me see. Value greater than 10. This might be wrong. I'll check. Oh, that's it. It's that simple. So the reason why this works is that value greater than 10, if the value that is iterating through is greater than 10, then it returns true. If it's false, then it returns false, right? So these filter numbers that filter it's basically going to have like a list of true and false, truths and false, right? For each one that is true, it just takes that array, takes that element, whatever that element is, stuff it into a new array. So that's kind of how it works. But it's very simple, not to worry too much about it. So that's it. That is it for the lecture, and then for the optional reading list, you also have a lot of material that you can
Let me
find
save you some time. Okay.
on learning JavaScript more from different people and how to think like a programmer. Because from our last session, you learn how to use HTML and CSS, but that's not exactly programming. And now that you can use JavaScript, which is actually a programming language, you have become a programmer, right? So you can also learn from this guy. What's his name? A really great programmer. His channel, Forest Knight. You can check out his channel too. Lots of great stuff. So learn how to think like a programmer and learn programming. How do you learn it in the easiest way, right? How do you learn it in the fastest way? All that. And also, if you have trouble learning JavaScript, all that. And lastly, this is 100 things to understand to be a web developer, which is a very cool video. Talks about a lot of the basic stuff that we went through, right? You know, API request response, messages, and basically 100 things that if you basically know how to explain those 100 things, you're gonna be a decent developer. So you can also check out this video. This is just optional reading material. Okay, so we have about 13 minutes left in class, and we're gonna just use these last 13 minutes to go through this assignment overview and a little bit. Yeah.
So on the video, when I look at the, was it W3 schools in the video, were we using some type of different programming languages? I don't know what we were using, because on the video, we're using, I think for each, no, on the video, he's using the if functions. No, we're using for each on the W3 schools.
Okay, can you share your screen and show me what you are referring to?
Let's see if I can share my screen. Let's see. What is it? So let's see if we can go to the video. I don't know if you can see this, but
Return.
so you can see for him we put if value is equal to this and this. And then if you look at the what we're doing over here, we're not doing any if function, we're just putting in just
okay.
I don't know.
Right. That's a good question. That's a good question. This is all JavaScript, so don't have to worry if there's a different language, but it's definitely a different syntax. And right, it's a different syntax, which just means that it's like a different grammar that's expressing the same idea, right? They say if something is greater than something, return true, or something like that, right? But if you say return A is greater than B, if A is greater than B, it returns true. If A is not, then it returns false. So they use, as the first example, if A is greater than B, then return true. Oh, that is the same idea of return A is greater than B. It's just like a shorthand. It just skips that if statement, but functionally it's the same thing. You can just use return A is greater than B, so that if else, it works out. Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for that. Okay, so we're just going to the assignment, which is IMDb. Hope you guys feel kind of, at least it's a little interesting compared to normal college assignments. You're actually gonna build your own version of this website. You will build it using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and it's just gonna display a list of movies that are now playing in theaters and allow the user to search for movies by the movie name. In terms of UI design, you can model after the actual IMDb website, which you don't have to include all these. This is like fancy stuff. I just want to see like a grid of movies, right? And don't have to have these options, trailer, and all that. Very simple. I just want to see poster. I want to see the rating and the title, right? And however you actually lay out all that, it's up to you. The UI design is up to you. So by the time you complete this project, you can describe how you can display dynamic data on a web page, because you're going to request that data and then display it. And then you're going to write JavaScript code to generate, display, and replace HTML elements. So what you're going to do is you're going to define a search bar and a movie grid, right? And let's just skip the stretch features. Okay. So what you're gonna do, let me skip to displays. Skip to displays real quick. All you have to do is that you're gonna define search bar and the movie screen, which are both just divs, right? I skipped it. I think I skipped the ending tag right here. Once you have those, that's where you're gonna leave it. So that when you have this movie script, you're also just gonna do what what we saw on those examples. You're gonna access these elements, and then with this inner HTML, you're going to add a bunch of stuff to it. That's gonna be the movie poster, movie grid. It's gonna be a movie card, right? For each movie, you're gonna create a movie card, and that movie card is gonna contain poster, title, rating, right? Simple as that. So I'm gonna provide more detailed assignment instructions later on, so you can consider the assignment assigned by tomorrow, right? So don't worry about that for now. But before that, I'm gonna walk you guys through the TMDB API. So I want you guys all to navigate to the course portal and do this with me. You're gonna use this TMDB API to be able to get all the movie data. So I want you to sign up for an account right here. I already have an account, so I'm just gonna sign in. And once you sign in, you're gonna go to account settings, and then go into API, and then it's gonna provide you with an API key that you can use. So once you have that API, you can go into their TMDB developers. You can go into here and then just try out their API. I want you to check out their, just follow me right here. And they have a lot of different things, right? There's all these things that you can look for. Suppose you want some kind of information, you just ask for it, right? So there's movies. I want to know something about movies or get some movies. And let's say I want to get the movies now playing in theaters. Once you get your API key, you can come here and go to try it out, right? So I'm gonna stop sharing screen for a second so that I can do this. Actually, yeah, it's fine. So once you get your API key, you can just follow the instructions to get your own API key, right? You're gonna apply, and then as soon as you submit, you'll get an API key. And then here's the result for an example API request. Once you get your API key, it's basically just gonna give you one of these, right? It's just an example for how you can request for information. For example, I'm looking for movies that are now playing. I'm just gonna search for these. The moviedb.org, movies now playing, right? API key, I'm gonna supply it with my key, which is just a list of a string of characters. And then all of this is optional, right? This is optional material. So once you get your API key, you can get that, right? You can type it into your, copy it, paste it into your address bar, and change this to your actual API key. Then you will be able to see a list of movies that are now playing in theaters. For this example API request, it was displaying just a movie, Fight Club, right? Because that example API request was to, I guess, look for a particular movie ID. And then when you look for that movie ID, it returns you that movie's information. There's whether or not it's an adult movie, what is the movie name, original title, what's the language, all that. So this whole thing is an API documentation for you to learn about how to use their API. And for our purposes, it's very simple. I want you to get a list of now playing movies, right? Once you get your API key, following through the instructions, you can basically take this and then just go search for it. And then when you enter that into your address bar, right, you're gonna get to a new page with nothing but the results. So at that point, you can also install a JSON view extension, because all of these, it's a little hard to read, right? There's just a bunch of things, and they're all like in one line and all that. So when you install this JSON view, it's gonna help you be able to see all the information very clearly, right? For example, there's different arrays, objects. You can see everything very clearly. So once you're able to see that, you can see what are the different properties that it has. Suppose I just want to get this movie title, right? I can just go for movie.original title, something like that, and then access the values. So that's about it for now. You guys can just go through these, and remember, you can ask questions in our Slack channel if you're having any trouble with this at all. And one thing to pay attention to is once you sign up for an account and get your API key, right? You can always access their API right here, right? API overview, or right here. You can just look at developers.movie.org, right? And then come back here again to see what you're looking for. And your goal is to be able to display the movies that are now playing, and then search for movies, and then search for movies. So you're gonna supply not only an API key, but also a search query, which is just a string. Can be Batman, right? And then it's gonna return me Batman movies. So that's the two main goals for the assignment. And you can try this out, but there's something wrong with their API, or I guess server. So that whenever you do this, I don't know if it's because I had a blocker. I got rid of it and tried it still doesn't work. So either way, once you get the example, like request HTTP URL, you can just copy it, right? Language is unnecessary. Oh, this is optional. You need to have a query. Does it have a query in here? I don't see a query. Okay, Batman, right? So now you have all these. You get an API. The query is somewhere in there. It's fine. Paste it into your URL, and then you're gonna get return a result, right? I didn't put my API key, that's why it's this. So you can try this out, play around with their API documentation and see what kind of things you can find, right? You can search people and actually just use it, and also use the JSON view extension so that you can view the results easily. So once you do all that, then you will be able to actually use this API to build a website. And again, similar steps with our last assignment as well. Okay, and lastly, our sessions will be this time 3 to 5 every week from now on. And thank you guys for joining. I know people still haven't joined us, but I'm sure there's still more with us because people have let me know that they weren't able to make it and they just work on the assignment. So thank you guys very much for making it to class on Sunday. And again, always remember, if you have any questions about the assignment or the course or anything, you can ask questions in the Slack channel or the help channel, and I'll be there to respond every day. Okay, and that's it. Any questions so far? Okay, no questions. Then I'll see you next session. Bye-bye.